In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. This mantra echoes across a million worlds, a statement of absolute certainty in an uncertain galaxy. But within the cold logic of endless conflict, within the mechanical thunder of war machines and the screaming of dying worlds, something impossible sometimes occurs. Something that defies the very nature of the Imperium's most tragic warriors. Something that, by all accounts, should never happen. A dreadnought falls in love. This concept seems absurd at first glance. How can a consciousness, trapped within a sarcophagus of ceramite and adamantium, a warrior whose body has withered to little more than a brain and a few vital organs floating in amniotic fluid, experience something as fundamentally human as romantic love? How can someone who cannot feel the warmth of another's touch, who cannot see with human eyes, who cannot even breathe without the assistance of machinery, form the kind of connection that defines the deepest human experiences? And yet, in the vast and terrible universe of Warhammer 40,000, where horrors beyond imagining are commonplace and miracles are both rare and suspicious, the impossible sometimes finds a way. Through the crackling static of Vox transmissions, through the cold electronic translation of thought into synthesized sound, through words exchanged across battlefields and between wars, a connection can form. It is a love story unlike any other, a relationship built not on physical presence, but on the pure exchange of consciousness and memory, of two souls recognizing each other across the void of their isolation. To understand how profoundly tragic and beautiful such a connection would be, we must first understand what a dreadnought truly is. Not the propaganda image of an honored hero continuing their service to the Emperor, not the tactical assessment of a mobile weapons platform, but the reality of what it means to exist as one of these ancient warriors. We must comprehend the depth of their isolation, the slow erosion of their humanity, and the desperate measures they take to maintain any sense of self across the centuries of their unnatural existence. Only then can we truly appreciate what it would mean for one of these beings to find another consciousness that understands them, that sees past the mechanical shell to the fading human within, that offers something the Imperium never can: recognition, understanding, and perhaps even love. This is a story about the most isolated beings in the galaxy, finding connection in the last place anyone would expect. It is about voices reaching across the void, about memories shared before they fade forever, about two consciousnesses choosing to hold on to their humanity together rather than slip alone into the mechanical oblivion that awaits all dreadnoughts. It is about the fact that even in the cruelest circumstances imaginable, even when everything that makes us human has been stripped away except our thoughts and our will, we still reach out for connection. Because in the end, that is what makes us human. Not our bodies, not our senses, not even our memories, but our endless need to be known by another, to share our existence with someone who understands, to feel less alone in an uncaring universe. And for a dreadnought, that need burns all the brighter because of how completely impossible its fulfillment seems. The nature of the dreadnought. To understand the impossibility and the profound tragedy of love for a dreadnought, we must first comprehend what these warriors truly are. The Imperium presents them as honored heroes, as walking legends who serve the Emperor beyond death. The truth is both more complex and infinitely more horrifying. A dreadnought begins with a space marine who has suffered catastrophic injuries in battle. Their body is broken beyond even the extraordinary healing capabilities of Astartes' physiology. Limbs shattered, organs ruptured, spine crushed. The warrior lies on the edge of death. In most cases, in most armies, this would be the end. A final prayer, perhaps the recovery of gene seed for future generations, and then the merciful darkness. But for a select few, those deemed worthy by their chapter's leadership, those whose tactical experience or symbolic importance is considered too valuable to lose, there is another fate. The apothecaries and tech marines descend upon the dying warrior with instruments that blur the line between surgical tools and torture devices. What follows is not salvation, but transformation, a process that strips away almost everything that made the warrior human, while attempting to preserve the one thing that makes them valuable, their mind. The process of interment is invasive beyond imagining. The shattered body is not healed, but harvested. Limbs that cannot be saved are removed. Organs that have failed are replaced with mechanical substitutes or simply removed entirely. The warrior's black carapace, that neural interface that once allowed them to wear power armor as naturally as their own skin, is cut away and replaced with far more extensive neural linkages. Cables and connectors burrow deep into the brain tissue, creating pathways that will allow the warrior's consciousness to interface directly with the Dreadnought chassis. The spine is extracted, or what remains of it, and connected to a new web of synthetic nerve fibers. The brain is carefully preserved, floating in a nutrient-rich solution designed to keep it alive indefinitely. The few organs deemed necessary for continued brain function, portions of the cardiovascular system modified to pump specialized fluids, fragments of the endocrine system to maintain chemical balance, these are kept. Everything else is discarded. What remains is placed within an armored sarcophagus at the heart of a Dreadnought chassis. This tomb becomes both life support system and prison. The warrior is connected to the Mind Impulse Unit, a piece of ancient technology that allows thought to become action, consciousness to control machine. When the neural integration is complete, when the last cable is connected and the last seal locked into place, the warrior's new existence begins. They cannot see with eyes any longer. Instead, they perceive the world through Auspex scanners, through targeting systems and sensor arrays that translate reality into data streams processed by their still organic brain. The world becomes a collection of threat assessments, range calculations, and heat signatures. Colors may remain, but they are filtered through mechanical lenses that prioritize tactical information over aesthetic beauty. A human face becomes a collection of biological data points: temperature, heart rate, respiratory patterns. The emotional context that normal humans read intuitively from expressions is lost, translated into cold analysis if acknowledged at all. They cannot hear sounds as humans do. Instead, acoustic sensors pick up vibrations and translate them into approximations of sound. A human voice becomes a waveform, analyzed and categorized. Music, if they encounter it, is reduced to frequency patterns. The subtle emotional cues carried in tone and inflection that humans use to understand each other's feelings are flattened, requiring conscious effort to interpret what was once instinctive understanding. Touch is perhaps the cruelest loss. The Dreadnought's chassis can sense pressure against its armor plating, can detect when its massive power fists grip an object or crush an enemy. But there is no sensation of texture, no awareness of temperature except as data, no feeling of contact. To embrace would be to crush. To reach out gently is mechanically impossible. The warrior exists within their shell, forever separated from physical contact with anything or anyone. Even their voice is no longer their own. When they speak, their thoughts are translated by the Dreadnought systems into a synthesized vocalization. The voxcasters built into the chassis produce a sound that is supposedly reminiscent of the warrior's original voice, but it is filtered, mechanical, crackling with static. Every word emerges as if from a great distance, as if the speaker is already fading into the past, even as they talk about the present. This sensory imprisonment would be horrifying enough if it were permanent. But for a Dreadnought, it is not even that consistent. Between battles, when their service is not immediately required, they are placed into stasis sleep. This is not rest as humans understand it. There are no dreams, no passage of time, no sense of consciousness at all. It is a complete cessation of existence, a switch flipped to off. When they are awakened, it is as if no time has passed, even if decades or centuries have actually elapsed. Imagine sleeping for what feels like a single night and awakening to find that everyone you knew is dead. The brothers you fought beside are names in the chapter's records. The commanders who led you are honored ancestors. The world itself may have changed beyond recognition. The ships are different. The equipment has evolved. Even the tactics and strategies have shifted with the changing nature of warfare. And you remain, unchanging, a relic from an era that exists only in your memory. This temporal displacement would be manageable if the memories themselves remained intact. They do not. The organic portions of the brain, even when perfectly preserved in the Dreadnought's life support systems, are not designed for the kind of extended lifespan that interment provides. With each awakening, with each return to stasis, neural connections weaken. Memories fade. The faces of fallen brothers become indistinct. The names of worlds where great victories were won slip away. Even the sense of self, that core identity that makes each individual unique, begins to erode. Ancient dreadnoughts, those who have served for millennia, often struggle to remember their original names. They know they were once someone specific, a particular warrior with a particular history, but the details have become hazy. They remember battles, tactics, the feel of combat, but the emotional context, the reasons why those fights mattered, the connections to the brothers who fought alongside them, all of that fades into a kind of tactical encyclopedia, stripped of meaning. Some dreadnoughts maintain their sanity through sheer force of will, through a stubborn refusal to let go of what makes them who they are. Bjorn, the Fell-Handed, the oldest dreadnought in the Imperium, has maintained his identity for over 10,000 years. But even he admits to the loneliness, to the sense of being increasingly distant from the world of the living. Even his legendary strength of will cannot completely prevent the slow erosion of everything that once made him Bjorn, rather than just another weapon system bearing his name. Others are not so fortunate. They descend into various forms of madness, their personalities fragmenting under the strain of their existence. Some become fixated on single memories, repeating the same stories over and over because they fear if they stop, those memories will be lost forever. Others become increasingly detached, their responses growing more mechanical, their tactical assessments becoming colder and more inhuman with each awakening. Still others rage against their fate, their bitterness at being denied the death they earned poisoning every interaction. And through all of this, through the sensory deprivation and the temporal displacement and the gradual loss of self, the dreadnought must serve. When they are awakened, it is because the chapter needs their firepower, their tactical knowledge, or their symbolic presence. They must march into battle, must destroy the enemies of the Emperor, must fulfill their function as a walking weapon. They are expected to be grateful for this honor, to consider their continued service a blessing rather than a curse. The Imperium calls them ancient ones, honored brothers, living legends. The tech marines who maintain them speak of preserving the wisdom of heroes. The chaplains who perform the rites of awakening remind them of their duty, of the honor they bring to their chapter. But beneath the ceremony and the reverence, there is an unspoken truth that everyone knows, but no one acknowledges. Interment in a dreadnought is a fate arguably worse than death. It is an existence stripped of almost everything that makes life worth living. No physical sensation, no natural sleep, no stable passage of time, no certainty that the person you were will remain the person you are. It is consciousness without embodiment, duty without end, service without the possibility of rest. It is being kept alive, not for your own sake, but because you are still useful, still functional, still capable of destroying the enemies of the Imperium. And perhaps most cruel of all, it is inescapable. Once the neural integration is complete, once the warrior's brain has been connected to the dreadnought's systems, there is no going back. The organic body is gone, discarded as unsalvageable. The consciousness remains, bound to the machine that has become its only possible body. Until the Dreadnought is destroyed in battle, until some enemy finally manages to breach the sarcophagus and end the pilot's existence, the warrior continues. Decade after decade, century after century, millennium after millennium, they continue. This is what it means to be a Dreadnought. This is the reality that the Imperium's propaganda conceals behind words like honor and service. This is the existence that these warriors endure, alone in their mechanical shells, isolated from everything and everyone they once knew, slowly losing the memories that made them individuals as they march through an eternity of war. And it is within this hell of isolation and gradual dissolution that the possibility of love becomes both impossible and absolutely necessary. The long sleep between wars. The existence of a Dreadnought is defined as much by absence as by presence. Between the moments of awakening, between the battles where they stride forth as engines of destruction, there is the long sleep. To understand how profound and desperate a connection between Dreadnoughts would be, we must understand what this sleep truly means and what they face when they return from it. Stasis is not rest. It is not the gentle descent into dreams that normal humans experience. It is not even the dreamless sleep of exhaustion. Stasis is the complete cessation of consciousness, a state so absolute that from the perspective of the one experiencing it, no time passes at all. When a Dreadnought enters stasis, their awareness simply stops. When they awaken, whether minutes or centuries later, it is as if they closed their eyes and immediately opened them again. This temporal disconnect creates a unique horror. Every awakening is a potential shock, a discovery of how much the world has moved on without you. The chapter that put you to sleep may have undergone significant changes. The commanders you remember may now be names carved in stone. The battle brothers you fought alongside may have fallen, their gene seed harvested and implanted in new recruits who never knew the warriors they continue. The very nature of warfare may have shifted, with new Xenos threats emerging or old enemies adopting new tactics. For ancient Dreadnoughts, those who have served for millennia, each awakening is like being a time traveler thrust forward into an increasingly alien future. They remember the Imperium as it was during their era, with its particular policies, its specific threats, its familiar faces. They awaken to an Imperium that has evolved, changed, adapted to circumstances they never witnessed. They are strangers in their own chapter, living relics whose memories of the past are treasured, but whose understanding of the present must be constantly updated. This creates a profound isolation that goes beyond the physical imprisonment of the sarcophagus. Even when surrounded by their battle brothers, even when honored and respected, the ancient Dreadnoughts exist in a different temporal reality. They cannot form lasting connections because they experience time differently than everyone around them. A friendship that feels immediate to them might span centuries for their friend, who ages and changes and eventually passes beyond death, while the Dreadnought sleeps, unaware. The Space Wolves tell stories of Bjorn the Fell-Handed, awakened once per century to share his wisdom, and recount the days when he walked alongside the Primarch Leman Russ. To the youngest Space Wolves, Bjorn is a figure of legend, the last living link to their chapter's founding. But consider what this existence means for Bjorn himself. Each awakening brings him face to face with strangers who revere him but cannot understand him, who ask the same questions their predecessors asked centuries ago, who want to hear the same stories he has already told countless times. Bjorn has watched his chapter evolve over 10,000 years. He knew the original Space Wolves, the ones who walked beside the Emperor during the Great Crusade and fought in the Horus Heresy. He has seen tactics change, equipment evolve, even the gene seed's quirks shift over millennia of genetic drift. He remembers when certain traditions began, because he was there. He remembers brothers whose names are now lost even to the chapter records, because they fell in battles so ancient that only he remains to recall them. And each time he is placed back into stasis, he does so knowing that when he awakens again, more of the world he knew will have vanished. More faces will be unfamiliar. More changes will have occurred in his absence. He is a man forever out of time, his only continuity, his own fading memories, becoming increasingly isolated, even as he is increasingly revered. This temporal displacement affects not just relationships with others, but the Dreadnaught's sense of self. Human identity is built partly on continuity of experience, on the steady accumulation of memories and the gradual changes in personality that occur as we live our lives. But when you sleep for a century and wake unchanged, when decades pass between your experiences while you remain frozen, that continuity breaks down. Ancient dreadnoughts often describe a sense of fragmenting identity. They remember who they were, but the connection to that person feels increasingly tenuous. They are supposed to be the same individual who was interred centuries ago, but they have not lived those centuries. They have not had the experiences, have not processed the changes, have not evolved as a person would naturally evolve. They are who they were, frozen in amber, while the universe moves on. This stasis also affects memory in insidious ways. Each awakening requires the brain to reactivate, to return from complete shutdown to full function. This is not instantaneous. Tech marines speak of initialization periods, of gradual returns to full consciousness. During these periods, neural pathways must re-establish themselves, connections must be reformed, and with each cycle, some connections fail to re-establish properly. Memories begin to blur. Was that battle on Morak Prime or Morak Secundus? Was the commander's name Thaddeus or Thaddeus? Did the campaign last 3 months or 3 years? The organic brain, even when perfectly preserved, is not designed for this kind of repeated shutdown and restart. Errors accumulate, details are lost. The narrative of one's own life becomes increasingly uncertain. The most terrifying aspect of this memory erosion is that it is gradual and largely unnoticed. A dreadnought may tell a story they have told 100 times before, unaware that details have changed, that facts have drifted, that what they remember is no longer quite what actually happened. Their brothers, if any who knew the original events still live, may notice the discrepancies, but say nothing out of respect. The dreadnought continues, increasingly confident in memories that are slowly transforming into something else. Some ancient dreadnoughts develop elaborate mnemonic techniques to combat this erosion. They might repeatedly rehearse certain memories during periods of wakefulness, reinforcing the neural pathways to make them more resistant to decay. Others record their experiences in the chapter's archives, creating external backups they can reference upon awakening. Still others simply accept the loss, knowing that eventually all specific memories will fade, leaving only broad tactical knowledge and a dim awareness of who they once were. The isolation of this existence cannot be overstated. Imagine being conscious for brief periods separated by subjective instants that are actually decades. Each time you wake, the people around you are different. The world has changed. Even your own memories have become less reliable. You are a ghost haunting your own life, increasingly disconnected from both your past and your present, existing in a series of discontinuous moments that feel like they should connect, but somehow do not. And you are alone in this experience. The Space Marines around you, even those who honor and respect you, cannot truly understand what this existence is like. They age normally, experience time normally, form connections that persist across years of shared experience. You jump through time, awake for battles and ceremonies, asleep for everything that makes existence meaningful. You are simultaneously the most revered member of your chapter and the most isolated. This is why other dreadnoughts become so important. They are the only others who truly understand this particular form of existence. When two ancient dreadnoughts are awakened simultaneously, there is often a moment of recognition, of acknowledgement that passes between them. They do not need to explain the temporal displacement, the memory erosion, the sense of being increasingly distant from the living world. They simply know. In the great halls where dreadnoughts rest between battles, sometimes multiple sarcophagi are housed together. On rare occasions, when more than one is awakened at the same time, they will communicate with each other in ways that seem strange to outside observers. They might reference events that happened centuries apart, as if they were recent. They might discuss battles long forgotten by everyone else. They might simply acknowledge each other's presence with a brevity that seems almost rude to those who do not understand. But to the dreadnoughts themselves, these moments are precious. They are connections with beings who exist in the same disjointed temporal reality, who understand what it means to wake repeatedly to a changed world, who share the unique horror and loneliness of their existence. In a universe where they are increasingly alien to everyone around them, including their own chapter brothers, other dreadnoughts are the only ones who truly see them as they are. It is in this context, in this profound and growing isolation, that the possibility of a deeper connection becomes so compelling. If a dreadnought could find another consciousness that not only understands their existence, but chooses to share it, to deliberately seek out their company across the gulfs of time and circumstance, it would be a lifeline of incalculable value. It would be an anchor point in the drift, a voice that remains familiar even as everything else changes, a reminder that despite everything, they are still a person capable of connection. And the only way such a connection could form, the only way two beings so isolated from physical reality could reach each other, would be through the one thing that transcends the limits of their mechanical existence, their voices transmitted through the Vox. Vox communication technology, the Vox system, is one of fundamental technologies in the Imperium, so common and so essential that it is taken for granted. Vox casters are built into every set of power armor, integrated into every Imperial vehicle. Standard equipment for every military unit, from the lowliest Astra Militarum squad to the most elite Space Marine company. And yet, for dreadnoughts, the Vox takes on a significance far beyond its tactical utility. It becomes their primary means of connecting with the world beyond their sarcophagus, the thin electronic thread that keeps them tied to the reality of their brothers and their chapter. At its most basic, a Voxcaster is a sophisticated radio communication device. It operates on oscillating frequencies to prevent easy detection and interception. The technology is heavily shielded against electromagnetic interference, capable of functioning even in environments saturated with radiation or disrupted by psychic phenomena. Depending on the power of the unit, Voxcasters can have ranges from a few dozen kilometers for handheld units to planetary distances for vehicle-mounted or backpack-carried systems. The most powerful Vox systems, those mounted on spacecraft or permanent installations, can communicate across entire solar systems. For a Space Marine in normal power armor, the Vox is simply another tool. They can communicate with their squad, receive orders from their sergeants, coordinate with other units. The helmet integration allows them to hear transmissions while maintaining situational awareness through their own ears. They can toggle the Vox on or off as needed, switch between channels, adjust volume. It is convenient, but not essential to their existence. For a dreadnought, the relationship with the Vox system is fundamentally different. Their Vox is not an addition to their senses, but a replacement for their voice itself. When a dreadnought speaks, their thoughts are intercepted by neural interfaces before they reach any physical organ. These thoughts are interpreted, translated, and converted into electronic signals that drive the Voxcaster units built into their chassis. What emerges is sound, yes, but sound that has passed through multiple layers of technological mediation. The official technical description is that a dreadnought's Vox produces a simulated vocalization loosely reminiscent of the pilot's original voice. This clinical language conceals a more complex and somewhat disturbing reality. The system does attempt to preserve elements of the warrior's original speech patterns, their pitch, their cadence, their accent. But these characteristics are filtered through machine logic, cleaned of biological imperfections, regularized and standardized. The result is a voice that might be recognizable to those who knew the warrior before interment, but it is clearly artificial, clearly mediated by technology. More significantly, the Dreadnought's Vox translates not just words, but the pilot's thoughts and emotions into audible form. The systems are sophisticated enough to detect the emotional state of the speaker through analysis of neural patterns and hormone levels in the life support fluids. This emotional data is then incorporated into the vocalization, modifying tone and delivery to convey something approaching the pilot's true feelings. But this translation is imperfect. Subtle emotions may be lost or distorted. The complex interplay of feelings that humans naturally express through facial expressions, body language, and vocal nuance must be compressed into pure audio. A Dreadnought experiencing profound sorrow might sound merely melancholy. One feeling cautious affection might come across as simply professional courtesy. The full spectrum of human emotion is reduced to variations in synthesized sound. This creates a strange dynamic in conversations with Dreadnoughts. Those speaking with them describe the experience as eerie, unsettling. The voice emerges from within the massive chassis, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It carries a quality of distance, as if the speaker is already fading into the past, even as they discuss the present. The mechanical undertones, the slight delays in response, the occasional static interference all serve as constant reminders that this is not a normal conversation, but a mediated exchange with a consciousness trapped within a machine. For the Dreadnought themselves, the experience is equally strange. They think in what they remember as their original voice, the internal monologue that has always accompanied their thoughts. But when they speak and hear themselves through external senses, that voice is transformed. It sounds like them, but not quite like them. It is as if someone has taken their voice, made a copy of it, and that copy is what the world hears, while their real voice remains trapped inside, audible only to themselves. This disconnect can be deeply disturbing, especially for newly interred Dreadnoughts who are still adjusting to their new existence. They must learn to accept that the voice that emerges when they speak is their voice now, even though it does not sound exactly as they remember. Over time, for those who maintain their sanity, the synthetic voice becomes simply who they are. But that initial period of adjustment, that moment of hearing yourself speak and not quite recognizing the sound, is another small death in the long process of losing one's humanity. The Vox systems of Dreadnoughts are also more powerful than standard units, by necessity. A Dreadnought's chassis is massive, often towering 3 to 4 meters tall, sometimes more for specialized variants. The Voxcasters must be correspondingly powerful to project the voice clearly over the sounds of battle, the thunder of their own weapons, the chaos of combat, the screaming of the dying. This means a Dreadnought's voice carries, audible across a battlefield, even without electronic amplification. This has both practical and symbolic significance. Practically, it means Dreadnoughts can command effectively in combat, their orders clearly heard by surrounding units even in the midst of chaos. Symbolically, it reinforces their nature as figures of authority and reverence. When an ancient Dreadnought speaks, everyone hears. The voice of legends carries weight that goes beyond the words themselves. But the power and range of their Vox systems also creates opportunities that might not exist for others. A Dreadnought can communicate over greater distances, can reach across battlefields, or even between different parts of a war zone. If 2 Dreadnoughts are deployed in the same campaign but in different sectors, they can potentially maintain Vox contact when others could not. This extended range becomes important when considering how connections between isolated individuals might form and persist. The Vox channels themselves are also significant. Military Vox networks are carefully organized into multiple channels, with varying levels of security and priority. Command channels for officers, squad channels for tactical coordination, general channels for broader communication, emergency channels for crisis situations. Dreadnoughts, by virtue of their status as honored ancients, typically have access to multiple channels and the authority to switch between them or establish private encrypted channels when needed. This means that two dreadnoughts who wish to communicate privately could do so. They could establish a closed channel, encrypted and accessible only to themselves, and converse without others monitoring their exchanges. In a military organization as regimented as a Space Marine chapter, where privacy is rare and most communications are matters of record, this ability to create a private space, even if only an electronic one, is remarkable. The Vox also functions across time in a way that physical presence cannot. When a dreadnought enters stasis, they cease to exist from their own perspective, but their Vox records remain. Messages sent to them are logged, stored in the chapter's systems, potentially preserved for when they awaken. Similarly, a dreadnought could record messages before entering stasis, messages that would only be played upon specific conditions, perhaps when another specific dreadnought awakens. This creates a possibility for a form of asynchronous communication across the long sleep. Two dreadnoughts who are rarely awake at the same time could leave messages for each other, creating a conversation that spans decades or centuries, but maintains continuity through the accumulation of recorded exchanges. Each could hear the other's voice, preserved in electronic format, speaking across the temporal gulf that separates them. There is something deeply poignant about this possibility. In a physical sense, two such dreadnoughts might never truly be together. One sleeps while the other wakes, their periods of consciousness carefully managed by the tech marines to maximize their utility to the chapter. But through Vox recordings, through carefully preserved messages, they could maintain a connection, a conversation that continues even when both are sleeping, waiting in electronic format for the next awakening. This is the technology that would enable the impossible, a relationship between two beings who barely exist, who have no bodies, who experience time in fragments, who cannot touch or see each other in any traditional sense. Through the Vox, through the synthesis of thought into electronic sound, through the preservation and transmission of these synthetic voices, connection becomes possible where it should be impossible. The Vox, that most common and overlooked piece of Imperial technology, becomes the thread that can tie two isolated consciousnesses together across all the barriers that separate them. The first transmission, an unexpected voice. Picture this: a dreadnought awakens. The process is never gentle. Consciousness returns in stages, systems initializing one after another in a sequence that feels interminable from the inside, but actually takes only minutes. First come the basic life support systems, the pumps that circulate fluids, the regulators that maintain temperature and chemical balance. Then the neural interfaces activate, connections re-establishing between organic brain tissue and mechanical systems. Sensation returns, but it is the sensation of a dreadnought, not physical feeling, but a flood of data from sensors and systems. For a newly awakened dreadnought, particularly one roused after a long period in stasis, the first few minutes are disorienting. The mind, having been completely inactive, struggles to process the sudden influx of information. Visual feeds from optical sensors blend with targeting data and threat assessments. Audio inputs merge with Vox channel identifiers and communication logs. The proprioception of the human body is replaced with status reports from servo motors and articulation systems. It takes time to sort through this chaos, to assemble the disparate data streams into something resembling a coherent picture of reality. Experienced dreadnoughts learn to manage this more quickly, but it is never entirely comfortable. Each awakening is a small death and rebirth, the self reassembling from fragments, confirming that, yes, you still exist. You are still you, despite everything. On this particular awakening, our Dreadnought, we'll call them Valorian, goes through the standard sequence. He is old by most measures, having served for nearly 6 centuries since his interment. Not ancient by the standards of beings like Bjorn, but long enough that he has watched 3 generations of his chapter's leadership come and go. Long enough that the names of his original squad brothers are carved on monuments, while their descendants serve in units bearing different designations. Long enough that he has begun to notice the gaps in his memory, the subtle erosion of details that he knows should be clearer than they are. The Tech Marines complete their activation rituals, intoning the prayers to the machine spirits, anointing the chassis with sacred oils, verifying that all systems are functioning within acceptable parameters. The chaplain approaches, skull-faced helmet gleaming in the dim light of the chamber where dreadnoughts rest between battles, and speaks the traditional words of awakening. Valorian responds with the traditional acknowledgements, his synthesized voice echoing in the chamber. He is informed of the situation that requires his presence. The chapter is deploying to a world designated Tertius Hive, responding to a distress call that suggests Xenos incursion, probably Orc raiders based on preliminary intelligence. Multiple strike forces are being dispatched across different sectors of the planet. Valorian will be attached to the 4th Company, providing heavy weapon support for an assault on what remains of the planetary capital's defensive installations. This is routine. This is what dreadnoughts do. They awaken, they receive their orders, they march to war, they return to sleep. Valorian has done this hundreds of times. The details change, different enemies, different worlds, different tactical situations, but the fundamental pattern remains the same. He acknowledges his orders, confirms his weapon systems are online, and begins the process of being loaded into a transport that will carry him to the deployment zone. It is during the flight to Tertius Hive that something unusual happens. Valorian is running diagnostics on his targeting systems, a meditative practice he has developed over the centuries to help settle his mind after awakening. The familiar routines of checking system after system, confirming that everything functions as it should, provide a sense of order and control. He is monitoring the tactical Vox channel, listening to the chatter of the Marines preparing for deployment, when he hears something unexpected: another dreadnought. The voice is immediately recognizable as synthetic, carrying that distinctive quality that marks it as originating from Voxcasters rather than organic vocal cords. But it is not a voice he knows. The dreadnoughts of his chapter, the handful who remain active, are familiar to him. He knows their voices, their speech patterns, their particular characteristics. This voice is different, similar in kind, but distinct in its particulars. The transmission is brief, a routine status report from another unit. The speaker identifies themselves as Brother Ancient Severina of the Sisters of Battle's Order of the Valorous Heart. She is attached to a different strike force, one deploying to the eastern sectors of Tertius Hive. The transmission is professional, tactical, providing an update on their position and expected arrival time. But Valorian finds himself listening with an attention that goes beyond tactical necessity. There is something in that voice, synthetic though it is, that captures his focus. Perhaps it is simply the unexpected nature of it. Dreadnoughts are not common in the orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas. The technology exists, the techniques are known, but the sisters do not employ it frequently. To hear a sister dreadnought is unusual enough to be noteworthy. Or perhaps it is something more subtle. The voice carries a quality that resonates with his own experience. There is a careful control in the modulation, a precision that speaks of someone who has learned to manage the emotional translation of the Vox systems. There is also, though he might be projecting, a hint of the same isolation he himself feels, a distance in the voice that matches his own sense of being separated from the world. The transmission ends. Valorian continues his diagnostics, but part of his attention remains on the tactical Vox channel, listening for that voice again. Hours pass. The strike forces deploy to their respective zones. Valorian's unit engages Orc forces in the ruins of what was once a manufacturing district. The battle is fierce but predictable. Orcs fight with savage enthusiasm, but little tactical sophistication. His assault cannon tears through their crude armor. His power fist crushes their war machines. It is efficient, brutal work, the kind that Dreadnoughts excel at. But even in the midst of combat, part of his awareness remains on the Vox channels. He listens to the chatter from other units, the reports of progress or setbacks, the calls for support or reinforcement, and eventually, he hears it again. Severina's voice, reporting heavy resistance in her sector, requesting artillery support to soften enemy positions before advancing. This time, Valorian does something he normally would not. He switches to a command channel and queries the tactical cogitator for information on all dreadnoughts deployed in the current operation. The response confirms what he heard. Sister Ancient Severina, the only dreadnought of the Order of the Valorous Heart, currently active, interred 73 years ago, following catastrophic injuries sustained defending a shrine world from Chaos Raiders. 73 years. Relatively young as dreadnoughts measure time, but old enough to have experienced multiple cycles of sleep and awakening, old enough to understand the peculiar nature of their existence, old enough to be isolated in the way that all dreadnoughts become isolated. The battle continues. Eventually, after hours of grinding combat, the Orc forces in Valorian's sector are broken and scattered. His unit secures the area and establishes a defensive perimeter while waiting for orders. It is during this lull, this moment of relative quiet amidst the larger war, that Valorian makes a decision that surprises even himself. He opens a private Vox channel and transmits on the command frequency that Sister Ancient Severina would also have access to. Sister Ancient Severina, this is Brother Ancient Valorian of the Iron Hammers. I hope your sector's resistance proved manageable. The words are formal, appropriate for inter-chapter communication, but beneath the formality, there is something else, an opening, an acknowledgement of shared experience that goes beyond standard military courtesy. For a long moment, there is only static, long enough that Valorian wonders if the message was received, or if it was received but ignored. Then the reply comes. Brother Ancient Valorian, the Orcs have been cleansed from our sector. Your concern is noted. The response is equally formal, but not dismissive. There is a pause, and then Severina continues, her synthesized voice carrying a note of what might be curiosity. It is unusual to receive direct communication from another of our kind. Most prefer to maintain focus solely on tactical necessities. And there it is, the acknowledgement that she understands what he is doing, what this communication represents. Not a tactical query, but something else. Something personal, a reaching out from one isolated consciousness to another. Valorian responds carefully, aware that he is navigating unfamiliar territory. In centuries of service, he has rarely engaged in anything approaching personal conversation with other dreadnoughts. The isolation of their existence, the focus on duty, the simple logistical reality that dreadnoughts are rarely awakened simultaneously, all combine to make such connections rare. There are few enough of us, he says, and fewer still who understand what this existence entails. It seemed appropriate to acknowledge a kindred spirit, however briefly. Another pause. When Severina replies, there is a subtle shift in her voice, the emotional translation of her vox catching something that might be warmth, or perhaps relief. A kindred spirit. Yes, that is a more accurate description than many would use. Tell me, Brother Ancient, how long have you served in this manner? Nearly 6 centuries, Valorian responds. Long enough to have forgotten more than I remember. And yourself? 73 years. Still adjusting if I am honest. Still finding the boundaries of what I have become. The admission of uncertainty, of still being in the process of adaptation, is striking in its honesty. Most Space Marines, most warriors of the Imperium, would never admit to such vulnerability, even to their closest brothers. But here, speaking across a private Vox channel in the midst of a war zone, Severina offers that truth to another Dreadnought, trusting that he will understand rather than judge. And Valorian does understand. He remembers his own early decades in the sarcophagus, the disorientation, the gradual acceptance that this was now his existence, the slow learning of how to function, how to hold on to himself while interfacing with the machine. It is a process that never truly ends, but the beginning is the hardest, when everything is still strange and the losses are still fresh. The boundaries continue to shift, he tells her. What seems impossible today becomes routine tomorrow. What you can hold on to with certainty now may fade with time, but you adapt. You find new ways to be yourself within the limitations. Have you found such ways? She asks, and there is genuine curiosity in the question, a hunger for guidance from someone who has traveled further down this path than she has. Valorian considers the question, really considers it, in a way he has not done in decades. Has he found ways to remain himself, or has he simply become what the machine and the centuries have made him, accepting the erosion as inevitable? I have found ways to endure, he says finally. Whether that is the same as remaining myself, I am no longer certain, but perhaps that uncertainty is itself a form of humanity. A machine would not question its own continuity. Severina's response carries a sound that might be a laugh. Though filtered through her vox, it emerges as a brief, modulated tone of acknowledgement. A philosopher warrior in a metal tomb, the Omnissiah works in mysterious ways. As does the Emperor, Valorian replies, though I suspect neither of them intended for us to find existential comfort in vox transmissions during combat operations. This time, the laugh is clearer, recognizable as such even through the synthesis. No, probably not. And yet, here we are. Here we are, Valorian agrees. They fall silent then, but it is a comfortable silence, the kind that exists between individuals who have found an unexpected rapport. Around them, the war continues. Other units advance, secure, consolidate. Enemy forces regroup, counterattack, are beaten back again. The grinding machinery of Imperial military operations proceeds as it always does. But on their private Vox channel, two ancient warriors in their metal tombs have found something that neither expected: recognition, understanding, the beginning of a connection that transcends duty and tactics and the cold necessities of war. When new orders come through, directing Valorian's unit to a different sector and Severina's forces to hold their position, they acknowledge the information with professional efficiency. But before Valorian signs off, before he returns his full attention to the tactical situation, he transmits once more on their private channel. Until we speak again, Sister Ancient. Until we speak again, Brother Ancient, she replies. May the Emperor guide your aim. And may he shield your sarcophagus, Valorian responds, completing the exchange with a blessing that both of them, in their unique circumstances, can appreciate. As his unit moves out, as he returns to the business of war, Valorian finds that something has shifted in his awareness. The world seems slightly less empty than it did upon awakening. The isolation that has been his constant companion for centuries feels, for perhaps the first time, not quite absolute. He has found another voice in the darkness, another consciousness that understands what it means to exist as they do. And though he does not yet name it, though he would not yet acknowledge the possibility, a seed has been planted, a connection has begun to form. And in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, where hope is a dangerous luxury, and connections are ephemeral things doomed to be severed by death or time, this small seed of possibility is a kind of miracle. Who could they love? The question of who a Dreadnought could form a romantic attachment to is both complex and illuminating. It requires us to examine not just the practical limitations of their existence, but also the nature of love itself, stripped of its physical components. When you cannot touch, cannot be touched, when your only means of connection is through electronic transmission of synthetic voices, what forms the foundation of intimacy. Let us consider the possibilities, each revealing different aspects of what such a relationship might entail. The most obvious, perhaps the most comprehensible, would be another dreadnought. Two beings sharing the same fundamental reality, understanding without explanation what the other experiences. There is a symmetry to such a pairing, a mutual recognition that goes beyond empathy into true shared experience. When one dreadnought speaks of the temporal displacement of the long sleep, the other knows exactly what that means, having felt it themselves. When one describes the slow erosion of organic memory, the difficulty of maintaining selfhood across centuries of discontinuous existence, the other understands with perfect clarity because they face the same challenges. The tactical realities of such a pairing are also significant. Dreadnoughts are often deployed together when multiple heavy support units are required. They would have more opportunities to interact during campaigns than a dreadnought might have with other types of warriors. Their Vox ranges are compatible, their authority to establish private channels equivalent. The practical barriers to communication, while never absent, are minimized. Moreover, there is something profound about two beings choosing to maintain their humanity together, to help each other resist the mechanical drift that threatens to consume all dreadnoughts eventually. They could remind each other of who they were, could share memories to reinforce them against forgetting, could anchor each other to their identities when the weight of centuries threatens to wash those identities away. In the shared project of remaining human, despite everything that has been done to strip their humanity away, they could find purpose beyond duty. But there are complications. Most significantly, time. The deployment schedules of dreadnoughts from different chapters are rarely aligned. One might awaken for a decade, while the other sleeps for a century. They could go through long periods where they never encounter each other, where their only connection is through messages left in stasis, recordings that preserve voices across the temporal gulf. The relationship would be fragmented, experienced in episodes separated by subjective instants that are actually vast stretches of time. Each reunion would require reconnection, re-establishment of intimacy that had been suspended in electronic storage. Consider instead a sister of battle, not a sister dreadnought, but a living, breathing woman in power armor who fights alongside these ancient warriors. The asymmetry here is profound and fascinating. She exists fully in the world of the living. She ages normally, experiences time normally, has a body that functions as human bodies function. He exists as a consciousness in a machine, experiencing time in fragments, separated from physical reality by the walls of his sarcophagus. What could draw them together? Perhaps the shared intensity of combat, fighting side by side in campaigns that span months or years. Perhaps a particular moment where one saves the other, creating a debt that opens a door to further interaction. Perhaps simply a conversation that begins professionally, but gradually becomes something more as they discover unexpected commonalities despite their vastly different existences. The sister would have to see past the machine to the man within. This is not as simple as it sounds. Dreadnoughts are intimidating, overwhelming in their physical presence and their symbolic weight. They are living legends, honored ancients, figures of reverence and sometimes fear. To look at one and think of them as a potential partner, someone with whom one might share intimacy, requires a particular kind of vision, a willingness to recognize the human in the mechanical. For the dreadnought, the challenges are different but equally profound. He would be falling in love with someone who exists in a world he no longer inhabits. Her physical form, her existence in time, her ability to experience sensation and touch, all of this would be foreign to him in ways that might be painful to contemplate. He would be aware, constantly, of everything he cannot offer her. He cannot hold her, cannot provide the physical comfort that humans naturally offer each other. His very presence is a reminder of loss, of the price of service, of what war takes from those who fight it. And yet, there is something compelling about such a pairing. She could be his connection to the world of the living, his reminder that there is more to existence than combat and stasis. Her presence could anchor him to the present, preventing the drift into the past that afflicts so many ancient dreadnoughts. Through her eyes, described through their Vox communications, he could experience aspects of life that are no longer directly accessible to him. The taste of food, the feeling of sunlight, the simple pleasure of walking through a garden. She could be his window into a world he no longer inhabits, but has not entirely forgotten. For her, he offers something that most warriors cannot: perspective that spans centuries, wisdom accumulated through experiences that stretch back through generations. His memories, fragmentary though they may be, connect to eras that are history to her, but lived experience to him. His understanding of warfare, of duty, of sacrifice, is so comprehensive that it becomes almost philosophical. He has seen the patterns that only become visible across decades of conflict. He understands the costs in ways that those who have not lived through centuries of war cannot. But the tragedy of such a relationship would be acute. She ages, he does not. She experiences decades of life while he sleeps. Each time they reunite, she has changed, grown older, accumulated new experiences. He remains frozen, emerging from stasis unchanged, to find that she has moved forward without him. Eventually, inevitably, she dies. And he continues, carrying the memory of her across centuries after she is gone, until even that memory fades, and she becomes just another name from his past that he can no longer quite place. Then there are the tech marines and tech priests, those who maintain the dreadnoughts, who perform the rites of awakening and the ceremonies of stasis. These individuals have unique relationships with dreadnoughts, spending time in their presence in ways that others do not. They speak to the machines, and through them to the pilots, during maintenance cycles. They are present during the vulnerable moments of initialization and shutdown. They know the dreadnoughts not just as weapons or symbols, but as complex systems requiring care and understanding. A tech marine or tech priest might begin to recognize the personality quirks of a particular dreadnought pilot, the subtle variations in how they respond, the particular concerns they express, the memories they cling to most tightly. Over years or decades of service, a form of intimacy could develop, the kind that comes from truly knowing someone, understanding their patterns and their needs. From the dreadnought's perspective, these maintainers are among the few individuals they interact with regularly who are not fellow warriors. The conversations during maintenance, while often focused on technical matters, can become opportunities for more personal exchanges. A tech marine who has tended the same dreadnought for years might be one of the few living people who remembers details about the pilot's pre-interment life, who can speak of them as they were rather than only as they are now. There is also something intimate about the level of access these maintainers have. They literally work on the dreadnought's body, such as it is. They monitor the pilot's vital signs, adjust the chemical balances of the life support systems, tend to the organic components that remain. This is a level of physical caretaking that approaches the medical, creating a relationship dynamic that is both professional and deeply personal. The challenges here are obvious. The power dynamic is complex, the tech marine or tech priest holding a form of control over the dreadnought's very existence. There are questions of consent and autonomy that become murky when one party can control the other's consciousness through the machinery that sustains it. And again, there is the problem of time and aging. The maintainer lives normally, grows old, is eventually replaced. The dreadnought continues, outlasting everyone who cares for them. Perhaps most unusual would be a navigator or a ship's officer, someone the dreadnought encounters repeatedly across campaigns because they serve on the same vessel. Naval officers and navigators often have long careers, sometimes enhanced by juvenat treatments that extend their service lives. They might interact with the same dreadnought over decades of deployments, creating a relationship built on accumulated encounters. These interactions would be structured differently than those with ground forces. Aboard a ship, during the transit between combat zones, there are periods of relative calm. The Dreadnought, secured in their transport cradle, has little to do but wait. The navigator or officer, between their own duties, might visit, might speak with the ancient warrior simply for the company of conversation. These talks, occurring in the liminal space of void travel, might become deeper and more personal than those that happen during the urgency of war. The fascination would be mutual. The navigator or officer would be drawn to someone who has seen so much, whose memories span such vast stretches of time. The Dreadnought would be interested in someone who navigates the warp, who has their own unique perspective on reality, whose duties are as specialized and isolating in their own way as the Dreadnought's existence. But fundamentally, all of these potential relationships share common elements. They must be built primarily on communication, on the exchange of words and thoughts through the Vox. They must contend with the Dreadnought's fragmented experience of time, the long periods of stasis that interrupt continuity. They must accept that physical intimacy, as humans normally understand it, is impossible. The relationship must be almost entirely mental and emotional, sustained through voice and choice and deliberate commitment. This stripped-down nature of the relationship, paradoxically, might make it more pure in some ways. It cannot be based on physical attraction, on sexual desire, on the animal compatibility that often initiates human pair bonds. It must be built on genuine recognition of the other as a consciousness worth knowing, on appreciation for who they are rather than what they look like or how they make you feel physically. It is love reduced to its most essential components: recognition, understanding, choice, commitment. In a universe where most relationships are transactional or strategic, where love is often just another resource to be exploited in service of larger goals, a relationship between a Dreadnought and another person would be remarkable for its purity of intention. It would have to be genuine, because there is no practical benefit to faking it. It would have to be chosen, repeatedly and deliberately, because the difficulties make casual connection impossible. It would be, in its own way, one of the few truly free choices available to warriors whose entire existence is defined by duty and obligation. And that freedom, that choice to connect, despite all the reasons not to, might be the most human thing either of them could do. The development of connection, love, if we can call it that, does not arrive fully formed. It develops gradually, tentatively, through accumulated interactions that build into something larger than any individual conversation. For beings as isolated as Dreadnoughts, whose experience of time is discontinuous and whose opportunities for connection are rare, the development of romantic feelings would be a slow process, marked by significance because of how unusual it is. After that first exchange on Tertius Hive, Valorian and Severina find themselves in occasional contact during the cleanup operations that follow the main offensive. The Vox transmissions remain professional in tone, ostensibly focused on tactical coordination between their units. But embedded within the military communications are small personal asides, brief acknowledgements of their earlier conversation, tiny threads of continuity that begin to weave a pattern. Your sector reported unusual orc behavior, Valorian transmits during one engagement. Tactical withdrawal rather than their typical berserker charges. Curious. Curious indeed, Severina responds. Though I suspect their curiosity lasted only until we demonstrated the futility of tactical withdrawal against flamers. Some lessons are taught with fire. A pause, then she adds, do you find that the nature of combat has changed much over your centuries of service? Or do the enemy remain fundamentally predictable despite surface variations? The question is tactical but also personal, an invitation for Valorian to share his experience, to position himself not just as a weapons platform, but as someone with accumulated wisdom worth hearing. The tools change, he replies. The specific tactics evolve, but the fundamental patterns repeat. Fear, aggression, desperation, courage, all of these manifest in similar ways, regardless of the century or the enemy. What changes is my relationship to these patterns. I recognize them more quickly now, but feel them less deeply. Feel them less deeply, Severina echoes. Yes, that distance grows, does it not? The emotional muffling that comes with this existence. It does, Valorian confirms, though I find that certain things can still cut through the muffling. Moments of recognition, unexpected conversations, small reminders that beneath the metal, something human remains. I am glad, Severina says quietly, to be a reminder of that for you, as you are for me. The exchange is brief, fitting within the gaps of a larger operation, but it matters too, both of them. It is an acknowledgement that their first conversation was not an anomaly, but the beginning of something ongoing, something both of them value enough to continue. As the campaign on Tertius Hive concludes and forces begin redeployment, they exchange Vox frequencies that will allow them to remain in contact even after they are no longer in the same war zone. This is unusual, but not unprecedented. Dreadnoughts of different chapters sometimes maintain occasional communication, sharing tactical insights, or coordinating when their forces operate in proximity. What makes this different is the unspoken understanding that the communication will not be purely professional. Months pass, measured in the time of the living world, though experienced as much shorter intervals for the two dreadnoughts, who sleep through much of it. When both are awakened for separate deployments on opposite sides of the same sector, they begin exchanging transmissions across the void. The distances are vast by human scales but manageable for military-grade Vox systems. Their voices reach across the light minutes that separate them, carried by electromagnetic waves that know nothing of the significance of the information they transport. They begin to share memories. This is a calculated choice on both their parts. Memory is the most precious and most fragile thing they possess. The organic portions of their brains are slowly failing, neural connections weakening with each cycle of stasis and revival. They know this, can feel it happening, recognize the gaps and uncertainties that mark the erosion of their past selves. By sharing memories aloud, by giving voice to experiences before they fade entirely, they are attempting to preserve something that would otherwise be lost. Valorian describes his chapter's homeworld as it was 6 centuries ago, before the industrial expansion that has since transformed its surface. He speaks of mountains that are now gone, removed by mining operations, of forests that existed before being cleared for manufactorums, of a particular valley where his chapter conducted training exercises, a place he remembers with unusual clarity, because it was there that he first understood what it meant to be a space marine, to be part of something larger and older than himself. The trees, he tells Severina, were ancient even then. Old growth, they called it, surviving from some earlier era of colonization. Walking through that forest felt like walking through history, each tree a record of centuries passing, silent witnesses to events they could not comprehend but nevertheless endured. Are they still there? Severina asks. The trees? No, Valorian says. Cleared 3 centuries ago to build a landing field, but I remember them. And now you know they existed. When my memory fails entirely, perhaps yours will hold what mine cannot. A forest of ancient trees, Severina repeats softly, on a world I will never see, in an era that has passed, but real, because you remember, and now I will remember that you remembered. Yes, Valorian agrees. That is something, at least. A preservation of sorts, however fragile. Severina shares her own memories in return. She speaks of her life before interment, when she was still Sister Superior Severina, leading a squad in defense of shrine worlds against heretic incursions. She describes her sisters, giving names and personalities to women who died decades ago, who exist now only in records and in her recollections. Sister Cassandra had a habit, Severina says, of humming hymns during combat. Not loudly, just under her breath, a constant background melody beneath the chaos of battle. It drove some of the others to distraction, but I found it comforting, a reminder that faith could persist even in the most terrible circumstances. "Did she survive?" Valorian asks, though he suspects he knows the answer. "No. She fell defending a chapel on Sanctuary's End, holding the line long enough for civilians to evacuate through underground passages. I was already interred by then, watching from my sarcophagus as the younger sisters fought and died. I could hear her hymns through the Vox channel until the moment her armor was breached. Then silence. The pain in Severina's synthesized voice is unmistakable. The emotional translation of her Vox system catching the grief that still resonates 7 decades later. "You honor her memory," Valorian says. "By remembering her hymns, by speaking her name, you ensure she is not entirely lost." "And yet," Severina responds, "each time I recall her, I wonder if the memory is still accurate. Does my mind preserve the truth of Sister Cassandra, or only my interpretation of that truth, increasingly distorted with each recollection?" "I do not know," Valorian admits, "but perhaps that is the nature of memory for all beings, not just those like us. We remember imperfectly, reconstruct rather than replay. What makes our situation different is our awareness of the process, our knowledge that each awakening might bring further degradation. A knowledge that makes us treasure what remains," Severina says. "Yes, I understand." Their conversations develop patterns, rhythms that both find comforting. They check in with each other at the beginning and end of deployments, brief transmissions confirming that both still function, still exist. During campaigns where their deployments overlap, they find time for longer exchanges, sometimes talking through the night watches when both are secured in their respective positions, their units resting while they remain vigilant in ways that do not require sleep. They begin to anticipate each other's perspectives, to understand how the other thinks. When Valorian describes a tactical situation, Severina can predict his likely analysis. When Severina expresses frustration with some aspect of their mechanical existence, Valorian knows the specific form that frustration takes because he has felt similar emotions himself. They develop shorthand, references to previous conversations that carry meaning beyond their surface words. The forest remains standing, Severina might transmit, and Valorian understands she is speaking about persistence of memory, about fighting against erasure. Sister Cassandra's hymns echo still, Valorian responds, acknowledging the same struggle, the same defiance against forgetting. For beings whose existence is defined by isolation, this growing familiarity is profound. They are no longer entirely alone. Someone else knows their histories, holds fragments of their memories, understands their peculiar reality. The Vox channels that connect them become lifelines, thin threads of connection in a vast and indifferent universe. But they are also aware, both of them, that what is developing between them goes beyond simple friendship. There is an intimacy to their exchanges, a depth of revelation and vulnerability that neither shares with anyone else. They are choosing to know each other in ways that go beyond tactical necessity or professional courtesy. They are, though they do not yet name it as such, falling in love. This realization comes gradually, marked by small moments of recognition. For Valorian, it arrives during a battle where he finds himself in extreme danger, his armor breached by an enemy weapon, his systems failing. As the Tech Marines work frantically to stabilize him, as consciousness begins to dim, his first thought is not of his chapter or his duty, but of Severina. He thinks, she will not know what happened. She will wonder why the transmission stopped. Someone should tell her. The thought surprises him with its intensity. When did her well-being become something he considers even in moments of crisis? When did her reactions to his fate become a concern that overrides other considerations? The answer, he realizes as emergency repairs bring his systems back online, is that it happened gradually, without any single moment of decision. Care accumulated until it became something larger, something that demands acknowledgement. For Severina, The realization comes during one of her returns from stasis. The Tech Marines are performing the awakening rituals, and as consciousness returns, her first thought is to wonder if Valorian is also awake, if they will be able to communicate during this deployment. That eagerness, that immediate reaching for connection with a specific other person, is unusual enough to give her pause. She has never felt such strong attachment to another individual, such specific desire for their presence in her awareness. But perhaps most significantly, both of them begin to notice what they do not feel in relation to others. Other warriors, even those they respect or have fought beside for extended periods, do not inspire the same quality of attention. Other conversations, even meaningful ones, lack the particular resonance of their exchanges with each other. It is not that other relationships are valueless, but that this one relationship has become uniquely important in ways that go beyond rational explanation. They are falling in love, these two ancient warriors in their metal tombs, building a connection through nothing but words transmitted across the void. And though they do not yet speak of it explicitly, though the word love remains unvoiced, they both know. It is there in the careful attention they pay to each other's messages, in the way they preserve recordings of their conversations, in the fact that reunion after separation brings something that might be called joy, if synthetic Vox systems could properly convey such emotion. They are no longer alone, and that changes everything. The horror of their reality. But love, especially love between beings like this, cannot exist without facing the full horror of what their existence entails. The development of deep feelings does not erase the fundamental impossibilities and tragedies built into their situation. If anything, caring deeply makes those impossibilities more painful, because now they have something precious to lose, something that highlights everything they have already lost and can never regain. The most immediate and persistent horror is the complete absence of physical connection. Humans are tactile creatures. We understand the world partly through touch, build intimacy through physical contact, express affection through gestures that require proximity and presence. For Valorian and Severina, all of this is impossible. They cannot hold each other, cannot provide comfort through touch, cannot experience the simple pleasure of physical nearness. This absence is not abstract. They are both aware, with painful clarity, of what they are missing. Severina remembers what it felt like to clasp hands with her sisters before battle, the physical solidarity that gesture represented. Valorian can recall embracing brothers after successful campaigns, the weight of armored shoulders pressed together in mutual acknowledgement. These memories, fragmentary though they may be, serve as constant reminders of sensations they will never experience again. And now, having found someone they wish they could touch, someone whose presence they crave in ways that go beyond the auditory connection their Vox systems allow, that loss becomes acute. They can speak to each other, yes. They can share thoughts and memories and feelings translated into words, but they cannot reach out, cannot close the distance between their metal shells, cannot offer the physical comfort that humans naturally provide to those they love. Severina describes this frustration during one of their longer conversations. After a particularly brutal battle has left her systems damaged and her consciousness in pain. "I want," she says, her synthesized voice carrying unusual intensity, "to reach through this Vox channel and touch you, not as threat assessment or targeting data, but as connection, to know you through something other than electromagnetic waves and synthesized approximations." "I know," Valorian responds, because he does. The longing in her voice matches something he feels but rarely allows himself to acknowledge. "I know, and I am sorry that I cannot offer you what you seek, what we both seek." "It is not your fault," Severina says quickly. "It is the nature of what we are, what we have become, but that knowledge does not make the loss easier to bear." "No," Valorian agrees. It does not. The silence that follows is heavy with shared understanding of an impossible situation. They care for each other, perhaps even love each other, but the fundamental vocabulary of human intimacy, the physical expressions that would naturally accompany such feelings, remains forever out of reach. Beyond the absence of touch, there is the horror of bearing witness to each other's battles while being unable to assist. When Valorian and Severina are deployed to the same war zone but in different sectors, they can monitor each other's Vox channels, can hear the reports of combat, can listen as situations develop from routine to dangerous to critical. And when things go badly, when one of them is in true peril, the other can only listen, separated by distance and tactical necessity, unable to help. Valorian experiences this during a campaign where Severina's unit is ambushed by chaos forces that have been lying in wait. He hears the shift in her transmissions from professional calm to urgent alarm. He can track the battle through the Vox chatter, can piece together the tactical situation from fragmentary reports. Her voice remains steady as she coordinates her unit's defense, directing fire, calling for support, but he can hear the stress beneath the mechanical synthesis, can detect the subtle shifts that indicate her systems are being pushed to their limits. And he can do nothing. His own unit is engaged kilometers away, locked in their own battle against a different enemy force. He cannot disengage, cannot race to her aid, cannot do anything but listen and hope that her armor holds, that her weapons remain functional, that the support she has called for arrives in time. Severina, he transmits on their private channel during a brief lull in his own fighting. I am monitoring your situation. You are not alone. I know. Her response comes back, breathless, despite the lack of actual breathing. I hear you. That is enough. That has to be enough. But it is not enough. Not really. And they both know it. His presence in her awareness does not stop the enemy shells from finding gaps in her armor. His monitoring of the situation does not make reinforcements arrive faster. His care, deep though it is, cannot protect her from the dangers she faces. All he can do is witness her struggle, carry the memory of her fighting, and hope that when the Vox channel falls silent, it is because the battle has ended, not because she has. When the silence does come, when Severina's transmissions cease abruptly, mid-report, Valorian experiences something close to panic. The emotion is muted by his mechanical nature, translated by his systems into increased attention to threat assessment and tactical data analysis. But beneath those mechanical responses is genuine fear, not for himself, not for his mission, but for her. Minutes pass like hours. He continues his own battle with mechanical efficiency, while part of his awareness remains focused on the silent Vox channel, listening for any sign of her return. He queries the tactical network for updates on her unit's status, receives only automated responses indicating communication difficulties in that sector. The uncertainty is worse than confirmed loss would be, because it allows imagination to fill the gap with possibilities ranging from minor technical failure to catastrophic destruction. When her voice finally returns to the Vox, damaged and distorted, but recognizably hers, Valorian's relief is so intense that his systems flag it as a potential emotional overflow requiring compensation. Still functional, Severina reports, her voice carrying the distinctive crackling that indicates damaged Vox systems. Apologies for the silence. Took a hit that compromised communications. Tech Marine is working on repairs. I am glad, Valorian transmits, and the inadequacy of those words to express what he feels is painfully apparent. I had concerns. I know, Severina responds, and there is warmth in her damaged voice, recognition of what he is not saying. I would have had the same concerns were our positions reversed. This existence gives us so many ways to lose each other, and that is the core truth, the central horror they must face. Their existence is defined by loss and impermanence. They have no control over their deployment schedules, no say in when they will be awakened or how long they will remain conscious. They could be separated for decades or centuries with no warning, one sleeping while the other wakes, their periods of potential connection determined by tactical needs that care nothing for their emotional bonds. Worse still is the knowledge that this separation is inevitable and will eventually become permanent. One of them will fall in battle eventually. Perhaps their sarcophagus will be breached. Perhaps their life support will fail beyond the ability of tech marines to repair. Perhaps they will simply reach the limits of how long even a dreadnought can endure, their consciousness finally giving way under the accumulated strain of centuries. And when that happens, the other will continue, not by choice, but by the implacable nature of their existence. They will awaken from stasis to discover that their connection has been severed, that the voice they have come to treasure will never sound again. They will carry the memory of their lost companion forward, watching as that memory slowly erodes like all their other memories, knowing that eventually even the pain of the loss will fade into general melancholy. This knowledge, this awareness of inevitable separation and loss, colors every interaction between them. They are building something beautiful and profound while knowing it cannot last. Every conversation might be their last. Every exchange of memories might be the final time they share that particular aspect of themselves. The temporal fragility of their connection is always present, a shadow over even their happiest moments. Severina speaks of this during one of their quieter exchanges, during a rare period when both are awakened but not actively deployed, maintained at ready status aboard their respective ships. Sometimes, she says softly, I wonder if what we are building is wise, if the inevitable loss we face might make this connection more pain than joy. Do you believe that? Valorian asks carefully. No, she admits. Or perhaps I do not want to believe it, but I think of you entering stasis, sleeping while I continue, or myself sleeping while you wake to a world that has moved forward without me. Each time we separate, it could be permanent. How do we bear that uncertainty? The same way we bear all the uncertainties of this existence, Valorian responds. By accepting that we have no control over when or how it ends, only over what we choose to do with the time we have. We could refrain from connection, protect ourselves from potential loss. But would that actually be protection? Or would it simply be choosing to experience the loss preemptively, denying ourselves whatever joy or comfort we might find in the time we do have? You make it sound rational, Severina says. But loss is not rational. Pain is not mitigated by prior acceptance. No, Valorian agrees. But meaning is found in the choice to continue despite pain. We are warriors. We understand the cost of commitment. This is simply a different form of the same truth. Some things are worth the price they demand. Even when the price is watching each other fade, listening to voices that grow more distant with each awakening until one day there is only silence. Even then, Valorian confirms, because the alternative is silence now, chosen rather than enforced. And I would rather hold on to you for as long as time allows than release you now to avoid future pain. Severina is quiet for a long moment. When she speaks again, her voice carries what might be tears, if she still had the capacity for such things. Then we continue, she says, knowing what waits, choosing connection despite, or perhaps because of, the horror of our reality. We love each other across the void, and accept that the void will one day reclaim us both. Yes, Valorian says simply. We continue, and they do, these two ancient warriors in their metal tombs, building their impossible love despite every reason not to. Because the horror of their reality does not erase the beauty of what they have found. It only makes it more precious, more deliberate, more defiant against the grinding machinery of war and time that seeks to destroy everything human. They continue knowing the cost. They continue accepting the pain. They continue because to do otherwise would be to surrender the last vestiges of their humanity to the mechanical existence that threatens to consume them. They continue because love, even impossible love, is worth the suffering it brings. Chaos and corruption. To understand the full spectrum of possibility and tragedy in Dreadnought relationships, we must also consider what happens when chaos enters the equation. The ruinous powers corrupt everything they touch, and Dreadnoughts, despite or perhaps because of their mechanical nature, are not immune to their influence. The question of whether a corrupted Dreadnought can still experience love, or what form that love might take when twisted by the warp, reveals disturbing truths about both the nature of chaos and the resilience of human emotion. Chaos Dreadnoughts, particularly those who have become Hellbrutes, exist in a state of torment that exceeds even the baseline misery of Loyalist Dreadnoughts. The warp has merged with their mechanical systems, causing the metal of their chassis to fuse with the organic remnants of their bodies. They are quite literally becoming one with their prison. The boundaries between flesh and metal dissolving in ways that are both physically agonizing and psychologically devastating. The pilots of Hellbrutes are driven insane by this process. The madness takes various forms depending on which chaos god claims them, but universally, it involves the erosion of whatever identity remained after interment. The warrior who once had a name, a history, a sense of self, becomes increasingly subsumed by rage or despair or twisted pleasure. Their consciousness fragments, their memories become unreliable, their ability to distinguish between reality and the whispers of the warp deteriorates. Can such a being still love? The question itself seems absurd at first. Love requires some degree of stable identity, some continuity of consciousness that can recognize another being and maintain attachment to them. It requires the capacity for empathy, for consideration of another's well-being, for choice that is not entirely dictated by compulsion or madness. And yet, chaos does not simply erase emotion. It amplifies, distorts, corrupts, but does not eliminate the capacity for feeling. A Hellbrute can still experience attachment, can still form connections, can still desire the presence of another. What changes is the form those feelings take, the way they are expressed, the degree to which they remain recognizable as love rather than possession or obsession or need. Consider a Chaos Dreadnought who falls in the service of Slaanesh, the god of excess and sensation. For such a being, the sensory deprivation of the sarcophagus would be torment of a particular kind. Slaanesh's followers crave experience, sensation, stimulation of any kind. To be trapped in a metal shell where touch is impossible, where taste and smell are irrelevant, where even pain is filtered through mechanical systems, would be a special form of hell. Such a Dreadnought might fixate on Vox communications as the only form of sensory input that remains accessible. The sound of another's voice, the variations in tone and rhythm, the emotional content translated through the synthesis. These might become objects of obsessive focus. They might develop an overwhelming need for constant communication, for the stimulation that conversation provides, for the connection to another consciousness that offers relief from the sensory void. If such a being developed attachment to another Dreadnought or another warrior, that attachment would be intense to the point of destructive. They would crave the other's presence with a hunger that goes beyond healthy desire into compulsion. They would demand constant attention, constant communication, constant acknowledgement. The relationship would be exhausting for both parties, characterized by extremes of passion and jealousy and possessive need. But underneath the corruption, underneath the excess and the compulsion, there might still be something recognizable as love. The desperate need for connection, the focus on a specific other person, the desire to please and to be pleased. These are twisted versions of affectionate attachment. The Slaaneshi Dreadnought loves, after a fashion, but loves in ways that are harmful, that consume rather than sustain, that ultimately destroy what they claim to cherish. A Khornate Dreadnought, by contrast, would express attachment through violence and loyalty in battle. Khorne cares only for blood and skulls, for the fury of combat, for the endless cycle of killing and dying. A dreadnought dedicated to the blood god would find their identity increasingly defined by rage, by the need to destroy, by the joy of slaughter. But even within this framework, attachment is possible. Two cornate dreadnoughts might form a bond based on shared violence, on fighting side by side in the endless wars of the traitor legions. Their love, if it can be called that, would be expressed through coordinated slaughter, through competing to see who can kill more efficiently, through the peculiar intimacy of shared bloodshed. They might bellow challenges to each other across the battlefield, pushing each other to greater acts of violence, finding in their mutual rage a form of companionship. This would be love stripped of gentleness, of tenderness, of everything soft and nurturing. But it would still be connection, still be a form of choosing each other over the isolation of individual rage. They would be each other's favorite killing partner, each other's greatest rival, each other's reason to continue the endless fight. And when one fell, the other's grief would manifest as a berserker fury that would not end until they too were destroyed, or until they had exacted such vengeance that the galaxy itself trembled. The tragedy of chaos corruption is that it takes something potentially beautiful and twists it into something monstrous. The capacity for love, for connection, for caring about another being, these things persist even in the damned. But they are expressed in ways that violate everything love should be, that hurt rather than heal, that drag others down into the same corruption rather than lifting them up. Perhaps most tragic would be the case of a dreadnought who falls to chaos while maintaining attachment to a loyalist. Imagine Valorian or Severina, corrupted through some terrible circumstance, their mind invaded by the whispers of the warp, their identity gradually eroded by demonic influence. They would still remember their connection, still feel the attachment, but increasingly filtered through the lens of their corruption. The loyalist dreadnought would face an impossible choice. Do they continue to communicate, hoping to reach whatever remains of the person they loved beneath the corruption? Do they try to convince themselves that their companion can be saved, that the connection they shared might serve as an anchor against the pull of chaos? Or do they accept that the being they loved is effectively dead, that whatever continues to speak with their voice is now something else entirely, something that must be destroyed rather than cherished? And the corrupted dreadnought, in moments of clarity, if any such moments remain, would experience a special kind of hell. They would be aware, at least partially, of what they are becoming. They would feel the attachments that once defined them warping into something twisted and wrong. They might desperately wish to warn their companion away, to sever the connection before it drags the other into the same darkness, but find themselves compelled by their corruption to do the opposite, to reach out, to pull the other closer, to corrupt what they once tried to protect. This is perhaps the darkest possibility in the spectrum of dreadnought relationships, not simply loss through death or time, but loss through transformation. To watch someone you love become something monstrous, to hear their voice speaking words that are no longer truly theirs, to face the question of whether mercy demands you end their existence or whether love demands you hold on to whatever fragments of them remain. The Imperium would, of course, demand the former. Chaos corruption is treated as absolute, irreversible, deserving only of destruction. A loyalist dreadnought who maintained connection with a corrupted counterpart would be suspect, potentially subject to investigation by the Inquisition. The practical response, the tactically sound response, would be to sever all communication, to treat the corrupted dreadnought as simply another enemy to be destroyed. But emotions, even those filtered through mechanical systems, are not practical or tactically sound. The heart, human or otherwise, does not simply stop caring because caring has become dangerous. And so the loyalist might continue to listen, might maintain the connection even knowing the risk, might hope against all evidence that something salvageable remains. And in that hope, in that refusal to abandon even what has been lost, there is perhaps the purest expression of love imaginable. Not love based on reciprocity or mutual benefit, not love contingent on the other person remaining who they were, but love that persists even when the beloved has become unrecognizable, even when the connection brings only pain, even when all rational calculation demands its termination. It is love that has passed through every trial and emerged not victorious but present, still there, still reaching across the void, even when the void has filled with demons and madness and corruption, still speaking, still listening, still refusing to let go completely, even when letting go is the only thing that makes sense. This is what Chaos reveals about love between dreadnoughts, that the capacity for connection, for attachment, for caring about another consciousness, is so fundamental to human nature that even the most extreme corruptions cannot entirely erase it. They can twist it, warp it, make it unrecognizable and harmful, but the core impulse remains. We seek each other, we reach out, we try to connect, even in damnation, even in madness, even when love has become its own form of torture. Because the alternative, the complete absence of connection, is somehow worse than connection that has been corrupted. At least the corrupted still feel, at least they still care, however wrongly. The true death is not the body's destruction, but the absolute isolation of consciousness, the final withdrawal into a self that needs nothing and no one. And dreadnoughts, loyalist and traitor alike, fear that true death more than any enemy's weapon. Philosophical questions. The concept of love between dreadnoughts raises profound philosophical questions that go beyond the tactical realities of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These questions touch on fundamental issues of consciousness, identity, and the nature of human emotion itself. By examining them, we can understand not just what such a relationship would mean within the fiction, but what it reveals about our own understanding of love, connection, and what it means to be human. The first and perhaps most challenging question is whether a consciousness interfaced with a machine can truly experience love, or whether what passes for emotion in a dreadnought is simply sophisticated simulation, patterns of neural activity that mimic feeling without genuine subjective experience. This is a variant of the classic philosophical problem of other minds. How do we know that other people have genuine consciousness rather than simply behaving as if they do? But it becomes more acute when the consciousness in question is no longer housed in a fully organic body, when emotions are mediated through chemical regulators and translated by machines, when the entire experience of being is filtered through systems that are partly biological and partly mechanical. From the perspective of the dreadnought themselves, the question might seem absurd. They experience what they experience. When they feel attachment, care, longing for another's presence, these are real feelings, not simulations. The fact that those feelings are now partly mediated by machinery does not make them less genuine from the first-person perspective. But from an external perspective, particularly that of observers who have never experienced such an existence, doubt might creep in. How much of what the dreadnought reports as emotion is actually emotion, and how much is the mechanical systems doing what they are programmed to do? Translate neural patterns into synthesized behavior that approximates human feeling. The Mechanicus, with their particular theology of the machine, would have complex views on this question. On one hand, they might argue that the integration of flesh and machine creates a higher form of consciousness, one that transcends the limitations of purely organic existence. The machine spirit, they would say, is real and worthy of reverence. The consciousness of a dreadnought pilot, partially merged with their mechanical housing, might be seen as having achieved a sacred union of flesh and steel. On the other hand, even the Mechanicus might wonder whether emotions like love, which seem so tied to organic processes and evolutionary imperatives, can truly survive the transition to mechanical mediation. Love evolved, in biological terms, to facilitate pair bonding and cooperative care? Does it still serve those functions when the beings involved can neither reproduce nor provide for each other in any physical sense? Without those evolutionary foundations, is what remains actually love, or merely a psychological echo of what love used to be? This leads to the second major question, the problem of identity and continuity. If a dreadnought's consciousness and memories are gradually eroding over centuries, becoming more fragmentary and less reliable with each cycle of stasis and awakening, at what point does the being they are now become so different from the being they were that we can no longer speak of continuity of identity? This is a version of the ancient ship of Theseus paradox. If you replace every plank of a ship over time, is it still the same ship? If you replace every memory in a person's mind, every characteristic of their personality, are they still the same person? For dreadnoughts, the erosion is gradual but relentless. Valorian, after 6 centuries of service, is not exactly the same being who was interred 6 centuries ago. Parts of his memory are gone. His personality has shifted, adapted to the constraints of his existence. The young warrior who first entered the sarcophagus had hopes and dreams and specific relationships that current Valorian can barely recall. The connections that defined that younger self have mostly dissolved. So when Valorian loves Severina, which version of Valorian is doing the loving? Is it some core essential self that has persisted through all the changes, maintaining continuity despite the erosion? Or is it simply the current iteration of consciousness that happens to bear his name, a being related to, but not identical with the original Valorian, capable of forming its own attachments that may have nothing to do with what the original would have wanted or felt? And if the latter, if each awakening brings forth a consciousness that is related to but not identical with previous versions, then how do we understand the continuity of a relationship? When Valorian loves Severina and then sleeps for decades and awakens changed, does the new version of Valorian automatically inherit that love? Or must he choose it again, re-establish the connection, decide anew that this particular other consciousness is worth caring about? These questions become even more complex when we consider that Severina faces the same issues. The being Valorian loves today may not be exactly the same being who first spoke to him on Tertius Hive. She has changed, memories have faded, personality has evolved. They are both in constant flux, both becoming different versions of themselves with each passing cycle. Their relationship is not between two stable entities, but between two processes of gradual transformation, each trying to maintain connection with the other while neither can guarantee their own continuity. A third philosophical question concerns the nature of love itself when divorced from physical embodiment. In normal human relationships, love is expressed and experienced through the body, touch, proximity, sexual intimacy, the sharing of physical space. These are all fundamental to how most people understand and experience romantic love. But for dreadnoughts, all of this is impossible. Their love must be entirely mental and emotional, conducted through the abstract medium of Vox transmissions. This is in some ways similar to how people in long-distance relationships communicate primarily through text or voice, but taken to an extreme that normal humans never experience. So we might ask, is what dreadnoughts experience actually love, or is it something else? Is it a form of deep friendship, companionship, mutual understanding that we might mistake for romantic love because it involves intensity of feeling and exclusive attachment? The counter-argument would be that physical expression is not essential to love itself, only to certain expressions of love. The core of love, one might argue, is recognition, understanding, choice, commitment. It is seeing another consciousness and deciding that their well-being matters to you, that their presence enriches your existence, that you are willing to be vulnerable with them in ways you would not be with others. By this definition, what dreadnoughts experience can be genuine love. The fact that they cannot express it physically does not make it less real. It simply makes it more pure in some sense, stripped down to its most essential components without the sometimes confusing overlay of physical desire and attraction. But this raises yet another question. Can love exist without hope for a shared future? Normal romantic relationships, at least healthy ones, involve some degree of future orientation. The lovers imagine a life together, make plans, build towards something. They are united not just by their present feelings, but by their vision of what they might become together. Dreadnoughts have no such future. They know that their relationship will end, that one of them will eventually cease to exist, while the other continues in isolation. They know that even the present is fragmentary, that they will spend vastly more time apart than together, that each reunion requires the relationship to be partially reconstructed because both have changed during the separation. In the face of this certainty of loss, this absence of any future beyond the immediate present, can what they share truly be called love? Or is it something else, a desperate grasping for connection in the face of existential loneliness, a temporary mutual comfort that both parties know cannot last? Perhaps the answer is that love does not require hope for the future to be genuine. Perhaps love in its purest form is choosing to care about another in the present moment, without guarantees, without promises, simply because they are who they are, and you are who you are, and the connection between you matters, however briefly it exists. By this standard, the love between dreadnoughts might be the most authentic form of love imaginable. It is chosen in full knowledge of its limitations. It is maintained despite every practical reason to abandon it. It persists not because it serves some larger purpose or leads to some desirable outcome, but simply because both parties have decided that the other's presence in their awareness is valuable enough to justify the effort of maintaining connection. Finally, we must consider what the Imperium would think of such relationships, and whether that matters. The Imperium's position on personal relationships is complex and often contradictory. On one hand, it recognizes the practical necessity of some forms of attachment. Soldiers fight more effectively when they care about their squadmates. Units with strong internal bonds demonstrate better morale and cohesion. On the other hand, the Imperium is fundamentally suspicious of any loyalty that might compete with loyalty to the Emperor. Personal relationships are tolerated as long as they serve the larger mission, but they are not celebrated or encouraged. The ideal imperial citizen would love the Emperor first, last, and always, with all other attachments being secondary at best and potentially treasonous at worst. For Space Marines, this suspicion of personal attachment is even stronger. The Codex Astartes, the foundational text, governing most chapters, emphasizes brotherhood and loyalty to the chapter, but these are institutional rather than personal attachments. Individual Space Marines are expected to care about all their brothers equally, to serve the chapter as a whole rather than forming exclusive bonds with particular individuals. A romantic relationship between two dreadnoughts would violate this expectation. It would represent an exclusive attachment, a prioritization of one individual over others, a loyalty that might potentially conflict with orders or tactical necessity. If Valorian refused a mission because it would take him away from potential communication with Severina, or if Severina hesitated in combat because her actions might indirectly harm Valorian's unit, these would be clear failures of duty. The Imperium would likely view such relationships as at best distracting and at worst dangerous. Tech Marines and chaplains charged with maintaining dreadnoughts might intervene, counseling the involved parties to end the attachment, perhaps even adjusting awakening schedules to minimize their contact. In extreme cases, they might judge one or both dreadnoughts as compromised by emotional attachment and retire them from service permanently. But does the Imperium's disapproval make the relationship wrong? This question forces us to confront the tension between institutional demands and individual humanity. The Imperium asks its warriors to sacrifice everything, their bodies, their futures, their very selves, all in service of a greater cause. But does that cause have the right to demand the sacrifice of all human connection, all possibility of love, all chance for individuals to find meaning beyond endless warfare? From the Imperium's perspective, the answer is clearly yes. The survival of humanity as a whole, the continuation of the Emperor's vision, these are so important that any individual sacrifice, no matter how terrible, is justified. Personal happiness, individual fulfillment, the desire for love and connection, these are luxuries that humanity can no longer afford in the face of existential threats from Xenos, heretics, and demons. But from the perspective of the individual dreadnoughts involved, the answer might be different. They have already sacrificed their bodies, their futures, their normal lifespans. They have given centuries to the Imperium's wars. Having paid such a terrible price, do they not have the right to find whatever small comfort they can in the connections they are still capable of forming? Does the Imperium's greater good require that they surrender even this? That they accept isolation so complete that even the possibility of love must be rejected? These philosophical questions have no easy answers. They force us to confront fundamental issues about consciousness, identity, the nature of love, and the limits of what any institution can rightfully demand from those who serve it. The relationship between two dreadnoughts becomes not just a curiosity within the fiction, but a lens through which we can examine our own assumptions about what it means to be human, what makes a connection meaningful, and whether love can exist in circumstances that seem to deny everything we normally associate with romantic attachment. In the end, perhaps the most important question is not whether dreadnoughts can truly love, but whether it matters. If two consciousnesses, trapped in metal tombs, experiencing time in fragments, slowly losing their memories and their sense of self, choose to reach out to each other, choose to share what remains of their humanity, choose to care about each other despite knowing the connection cannot last, then perhaps that choice is enough. Perhaps the reaching out is what defines us as human, regardless of whether our bodies are flesh or metal, regardless of whether our emotions are processed by purely biological brains or by systems that are partly machine. Perhaps love, in the end, is simply the choice to care, and that choice remains possible, remains meaningful, remains profoundly human, no matter what form we take or what circumstances we endure. Tragic endings and bittersweet moments. Every story, even one built on the premise of impossible love in an impossible situation, must eventually end. For beings like Valorian and Severina, for any dreadnoughts who find connection in the darkness of their existence, the endings are rarely happy. But neither are they entirely without meaning or beauty, however tragic their final forms may be. Consider the most straightforward ending: death in battle. One of them, let us say Valorian, is deployed to a war zone that proves more dangerous than intelligence suggested. The enemy, perhaps a Tyranid splinter fleet or a particularly well-equipped Chaos warband, brings weapons specifically designed to breach Dreadnought armor. The battle goes poorly from the beginning. Valorian's unit is surrounded, cut off from reinforcement. He fights with the skill of 6 centuries, but even ancient skill has limits when faced with overwhelming numbers and superior firepower. Severina is on a different world, fighting a different battle, but she monitors the tactical networks, staying informed about major operations involving Imperial forces. She hears the distress calls from Valorian's sector. She listens as the situation deteriorates, as desperate requests for extraction give way to final stand protocols. And then, silence. Not the silence of communications failure, which would at least leave room for hope, but the silence that comes when a dreadnought's Vox systems fail permanently, when the neural interfaces cease to function, when the organic components that sustained consciousness for centuries are finally destroyed. The silence of true death. Severina knows. The moment his voice disappears from the Vox channels, something in her awareness recognizes the nature of that absence. It is not sleep or stasis or temporary disconnection. It is ending, finality. The particular presence that was Valorian, that unique configuration of consciousness and memory that she had come to know so well, has ceased to exist. She continues her own battle because she must, because duty does not pause for grief. But part of her consciousness is no longer fully engaged with the tactical situation. Part of her is already retreating into the memories of their conversations, trying to preserve them, trying to ensure that when her own memory begins to fade, she continues her own battle because she must, because duty does not pause for grief. But part of her consciousness is no longer fully engaged with the tactical situation. Part of her is already retreating into the memories of their conversations, trying to preserve them, trying to ensure that when her own memory begins to fade, as it inevitably will, some trace of him will remain. Later, when her battle is won and she returns to her ship, she requests access to the recorded Vox logs. The Tech Marines comply, though they do not understand why she needs them. She listens to their conversations, hours and hours of exchanges spanning years of campaigns. His voice, synthetic but distinctly his, speaking words she remembers and some she had forgotten. The particular way he phrased things, the pauses before he spoke when considering a complex question, the subtle variations in his Vox synthesis that indicated emotional states. She creates a compilation, a single file containing what she considers his most essential communications. Not the tactical reports or the formal acknowledgements, but the personal moments, the times he shared memories, the times he expressed care, the times he was, despite everything, most fully himself. This recording she keeps separate from her other files, protected, preserved. It is her shrine to him, her memorial. And when she is awakened for future campaigns, one of her first acts is always to listen to a portion of it, to hear his voice again, to remember that she was not always this alone. But this recording is also a form of torture. With each awakening, with each passage of time that she experiences as instantaneous, but which actually spans decades, she notices changes in how she hears it. Details that once seemed significant fade into background. Inflections she once found meaningful become just sounds. The organic deterioration of her own memory is stealing even this from her, transforming her most precious possession into something she understands less and less. Eventually, centuries later, when Severina herself has become truly ancient, when her memory has eroded to the point where she struggles to recall specific faces or names from her past, she still has the recording. But she no longer fully remembers who the voice belongs to. She knows it was someone important, someone she cared about deeply. She knows listening to it brings her comfort, though she cannot articulate why. The specifics have been lost, leaving only a general sense of longing for something she once had and has now forgotten. This is perhaps the cruelest ending, not death itself, but the slow erasure of what the relationship meant. Valorian is gone, but the final and most complete loss is when Severina can no longer fully remember him, when love itself becomes just another casualty of the mechanical existence that preserves the body while slowly destroying everything that gave that existence meaning. But consider a different scenario, one that is in some ways more painful. One survives while the other descends into madness. Age affects dreadnoughts differently. Some maintain clarity of mind for millennia. Others succumb much more quickly to the psychological strain of their existence. The isolation, the temporal displacement, the gradual loss of self. These pressures accumulate until something breaks. Imagine that Severina begins to show signs of deterioration. Nothing dramatic at first, just small inconsistencies. She tells Valorian the same story twice, not realizing she has already shared it. She refers to events that never happened, memories that seem to be composites of multiple experiences. She begins confusing details from different campaigns, different worlds, different eras of her service. Valorian notices. How could he not? He has known her for so long, has listened to her with such attention, that any deviation from her normal patterns is immediately apparent. At first, he says nothing, not wanting to draw attention to something that might distress her. But as the inconsistencies accumulate, as it becomes clear that this is not temporary confusion, but progressive decline, he must face the reality of what is happening. She is losing herself. The consciousness he has known and loved is slowly fragmenting, pieces of her identity falling away like leaves from a dying tree, and there is nothing he can do to stop it. The tech marines and chaplains notice as well. They monitor her neural activity, track the deterioration in her cognitive function. They have protocols for this situation, procedures developed over millennia of managing dreadnoughts. When the decay reaches a certain threshold, when the pilot can no longer be relied upon for tactical competence, the usual practice is to retire them to permanent stasis. Not death, not exactly, but an ending nonetheless. Consciousness preserved, but never again awakened, stored in the chapter's most sacred vaults as honored relics of past service. Valorian argues against this decision. Severina can still function, he insists. She is still capable of combat, still able to serve. The confusion affects only her memories, not her combat reflexes or tactical instincts. She should be allowed to continue, to remain in service as long as she is useful. But he knows, even as he makes these arguments, that he is being selfish. He does not want to lose her. The thought of her being placed into permanent stasis, of never hearing her voice again, of the connection between them being severed not by death, but by institutional decision, is unbearable. He would rather watch her decline, rather witness her gradual dissolution, than face the silence of her absence. The tragedy deepens when Severina herself begins to forget him. Not all at once, but gradually. She no longer remembers all their conversations. She forgets details of their relationship, asks questions she has asked before, sometimes fails to recognize his voice immediately when he initiates contact. Each instance is a small death, a piece of what they shared being lost forever. And then comes a moment that breaks something fundamental in Valorian. They are speaking on their private channel, and Severina asks him a question with perfect sincerity. "Have we met before? Your voice seems familiar, but I cannot place when we might have encountered each other." She has forgotten him entirely, forgotten their years of connection, their conversations, the love they built despite all obstacles. To her, in this moment, he is just another dreadnought, a stranger whose voice happens to sound vaguely familiar for reasons she cannot identify. Valorian must choose how to respond. Does he remind her? Does he try to explain their history, knowing that even if she believes him, she will likely forget again? Or does he accept this erasure, acknowledge that the Severina he knew is effectively gone, and treat her as the stranger she now perceives him to be? He chooses to remind her because he cannot do otherwise. He speaks of their first meeting on Tertius Hive, of the conversations that followed, of the years they spent maintaining connection across the void. He describes specific moments, hoping something will trigger recognition, will bring back even fragments of what she has lost. And remarkably, it works, partially. As he speaks, he can hear something shifting in her responses. Not full memory perhaps, but a sense of familiarity, a feeling that what he describes is true, even if she cannot recall the specific events. By the end of their conversation, she acknowledges that yes, they must have shared something significant, though the details remain hazy. "I am sorry," she tells him, and the sorrow in her synthesized voice is genuine. "I am sorry that I cannot remember what we were to each other. I can tell from your voice that it mattered, that I mattered to you, and I am sorry that I have forgotten." "It is not your fault," Valorian responds, though the words feel inadequate. "This existence takes memory from all of us eventually. You are simply experiencing what I will likely face in time." "Then promise me something," Severina says. "When I forget you again, because I likely will, do not let me drift entirely. Remind me, Even if I do not remember, even if I can never fully recall what we shared, tell me that I was not always alone. Tell me that once, someone knew me. I promise, Valorian says, and means it with every circuit and servo of his mechanical form. He keeps that promise. Each time they are awakened simultaneously, he reaches out to her. Sometimes she remembers him immediately. Sometimes it takes prompting. Sometimes she has forgotten entirely, and he must reintroduce himself, must rebuild their connection from nothing. But he never stops trying, never accepts her forgetting as final, because as long as he remembers, as long as he can speak of what they shared, something of it remains. Eventually, the Order of the Valorous Heart makes the decision to place Severina into permanent stasis. Her cognitive decline has progressed too far. Her tactical reliability has become too uncertain. She is honored in a ceremony that recognizes her centuries of service, placed in a special vault reserved for the most ancient and revered warriors. And Valorian, listening to the reports of her retirement, knows that he has lost her as completely as if she had died in battle. But in some ways, this ending is worse than death. She still exists, still technically lives, but is forever beyond reach. He could visit her resting place, could stand before her silent sarcophagus, but he would receive no response. She is preserved as a relic, a symbol, a piece of history, but no longer a person, no longer a consciousness capable of connection. And he continues, carrying the memory of her forward into a future she will never experience. He is the only one who still remembers what they shared, the only repository of their conversations, their connection, their love. When his own memory eventually fails, when he too succumbs to the erosion that claimed her, everything they built together will be lost entirely, as if it never existed. This is the ending that dreadnoughts fear most, not destruction in battle, which at least has the dignity of finality, but this slow dissolution, this gradual erasure of self and memory and meaning, until nothing remains but a functional weapons platform bearing a name that no longer signifies a person. Yet there are also moments of bittersweet beauty, glimpses of grace within the tragedy. Consider the possibility of a final meeting, a last conversation where both parties know it will be their final exchange. Valorian and Severina are both being deployed to the same war zone, but to sectors that will keep them far apart. Moreover, both know from the strategic briefing that this campaign will be brutal, that casualties among even the heaviest units are expected to be significant. The chance that both will survive is low. The chance that both will survive and be awakened simultaneously in the future is even lower. They establish a private Vox channel on the night before deployment, speaking across the void between their ships. Neither explicitly acknowledges that this may be their last conversation, but both know it. The awareness colors every word, gives weight to exchanges that might otherwise seem trivial. "I have been thinking," Severina says, "about the forest you described to me, the ancient trees on your chapter's homeworld, the ones that no longer exist." "I remember," Valorian responds, though he wonders how much of that memory is still accurate after so many years. "Why do you think of them now?" "Because they were witnesses," Severina explains. "They stood silent and observed centuries passing, generations living and dying, history unfolding beneath their branches. And then they were gone, cut down for practical purposes, and all that witnessing was lost. No record remains of what they saw, what they endured, what they meant to the ecosystem that grew around them." "A melancholy thought for the eve of battle," Valorian observes. "Perhaps," Severina agrees, "but also strangely comforting. Those trees served their purpose, provided shade and shelter and oxygen, witnessed countless events of significance to those who lived among them, and then they were gone, and the world continued. Their loss was real, but it was not the end of everything. Life adapted, found new patterns, continued. You are preparing me for your absence, Valorian realizes. Or my own for yours, Severina responds. We do not know which of us will fall, or if both will survive only to be separated by the vagaries of deployment scheduling. What I know is that this moment, this conversation, may be our last. And I want to say certain things, while the opportunity remains. Then say them, Valorian encourages, though part of him wants to protest, to insist that this will not be their last exchange, that they will have many more conversations in the years to come. Thank you, Severina says simply, for seeing me when I was invisible, for speaking to me when I was silent, for reminding me that despite this metal shell, despite the centuries and the forgetting, I am still someone worth knowing. You gave me something I did not expect to find in this existence. Companionship, understanding, perhaps even love, though I am no longer certain I remember what that word truly means. I do remember, Valorian tells her. And yes, it was love. It is love. Will be love. For as long as I continue to function and hold the memory of who you are. Then I die content, Severina says, knowing that I was seen, that I mattered to someone, that this impossible connection we built across the void was real, even if it ends tomorrow. It does not end, Valorian insists. Even if we never speak again, what we shared continues. In my memory, in the decisions I make because of knowing you, in the way I understand myself differently because you helped me see aspects I had forgotten. You are part of me now, Severina, part of who I have become, and that cannot be taken away by distance or death or time. A beautiful sentiment, Severina responds, and he can hear what might be tears in her voice, if she still had the capacity for such things. One I hope is true. They fall silent then, but it is the comfortable silence of two beings who understand each other completely, who need no words to communicate the depth of their connection. They remain on the channel for hours, saying nothing, simply existing in each other's awareness, taking comfort in the presence of another consciousness that knows and accepts them fully. When dawn breaks on their respective ships, when the time comes to load into their deployment vessels and descend to the war-torn surface below, they finally speak again. May the Emperor guide your aim, Severina says, the traditional blessing taking on new significance in this context. And may he shield your sarcophagus, Valorian responds. Until we meet again, in this life or whatever comes after. Until we meet again, Severina echoes. The channel closes. They descend to battle, each carrying the other's presence in their awareness, each fighting not just for the Imperium or their respective orders, but for the possibility that they might survive to speak again, to continue the impossible relationship they have built. In this particular scenario, let us say that both survive. The campaign is brutal, as predicted, and both take significant damage, but neither is destroyed entirely. They are both retrieved, both repaired, both placed into stasis to await the next time they are needed. And decades later, when both are awakened for different deployments in the same sector, when they establish contact and hear each other's voices again across the Vox, the relief and joy are palpable, even through their mechanical speech systems. They have been granted a reprieve, an extension of time, another opportunity to continue what they began. You endure, Valorian says, and the words carry weight beyond their simple meaning. As do you, Severina responds. Against all odds and expectations, we both endure. Then let us make the most of it, Valorian suggests. Let us continue building this impossible thing we have made, for as long as time allows. Yes, Severina agrees, for as long as time allows. This is the bittersweet victory. Not permanent salvation, not guarantee of a future together, but simply more time. A reprieve from the inevitable. Another chance to speak, to share, to maintain the connection that gives meaning to their existence. It is not the happy ending that conventional romance demands, but in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, where hope itself is a dangerous luxury, it is perhaps the best ending possible. They continue, they endure, and for as long as they both function, they are not entirely alone. That has to be enough, because in this universe, in these circumstances, it is all that is possible. Why this story matters. In a universe characterized by its grim darkness, by its relentless focus on the brutal realities of endless war, by its insistence that there is no peace among the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter, the story of two dreadnoughts finding love might seem out of place. It might appear to violate the fundamental tone and themes that make Warhammer 40,000 what it is. But in truth, this story is quintessentially 40k precisely because of how it engages with the setting's darkness rather than denying it. The grimdark aesthetic is not just about violence and suffering for their own sake. At its best, it is about examining what remains of humanity when everything has been stripped away. It asks, when all hope seems lost, when the universe is hostile and uncaring, when individuals are ground down by forces vastly beyond their control, what keeps people going? What makes life worth living when existence itself seems designed to crush all joy and meaning? The answer, this story suggests, is connection. The fundamental human need to be known by another, to share our existence with someone who understands, to feel less alone in an uncaring universe. This need persists even in the most extreme circumstances, even when every material condition seems to make it impossible. Dreadnoughts represent the ultimate expression of the Imperium's willingness to sacrifice individuals for the collective good. Everything that made these warriors human, everything that gave their lives texture and meaning, has been systematically removed in service of transforming them into weapons. Their bodies are gone. Their ability to experience physical sensation is gone. Their natural experience of time is gone. Even their memories, their very sense of self, is slowly being eroded by the mechanical existence they endure. And yet, even in these circumstances, the human impulse toward connection persists. Two consciousnesses, trapped in metal tombs, experiencing existence in fragmentary and discontinuous ways, still reach out to each other, still choose to share what remains of their humanity, still build something meaningful despite knowing it cannot last. This is not a denial of the setting's darkness. It is an affirmation that even the most extreme darkness cannot entirely extinguish what makes us human. The Imperium can strip away our bodies, our freedoms, our futures. It can demand every sacrifice, enforce every cruelty, grind us down into component parts of its vast war machine. But the core human capacity for connection, for caring about another consciousness, for choosing to be vulnerable with someone else, this persists. And that persistence is itself a form of resistance. Not armed rebellion, not refusal to serve, but a quieter and more profound defiance. The insistence that we are more than just weapons, more than just resources to be consumed by the endless war. We are beings capable of love, and no amount of mechanical augmentation or institutional pressure can entirely erase that capacity. Consider what this means in the larger context of the Imperium. The Imperium functions by reducing individuals to their utility. You are a soldier, or a worker, or a servitor, or a resource to be extracted and processed. Your personal feelings, your individual desires, your need for connection and meaning, these are at best irrelevant and at worst obstacles to optimal functioning. When two dreadnoughts choose to love each other, they are asserting their individuality against this reductionism. They are saying, we are not just weapons platforms, we are people, with histories and feelings and the capacity for connection. You can imprison us in metal shells, you can erase our memories, you can deny us every physical comfort, but you cannot make us stop being human. This has revolutionary implications, even if neither dreadnought would frame it in those terms. They are not trying to overthrow the Imperium or challenge its authority. They remain loyal servants, faithful to the Emperor and their respective orders, but in choosing to maintain their humanity, in refusing to become entirely mechanical, despite everything that has been done to them, they are preserving something the Imperium wants to destroy: the individual's right to meaning beyond service. The story also matters because of what it reveals about the nature of love itself. In most romantic narratives, love is tied to physical presence, to bodies in proximity, to the possibility of touch and sexual intimacy and shared physical space. The story of two dreadnoughts strips all of this away, reducing love to its most essential components. What remains when you cannot touch, when you cannot see each other's faces, when you experience time differently, when your very memories are slowly failing? What remains is choice. The deliberate decision to care about another consciousness, to prioritize their well-being, to share your inner life with them despite all the practical difficulties. This stripped-down version of love illuminates something important about all love: that its foundation is not physical attraction or practical compatibility, but recognition. The moment when one consciousness sees another and thinks, "You, I choose you. Not because you serve my needs perfectly, not because you make my life easier, but because you are who you are, and that matters to me." For dreadnoughts, this recognition is particularly poignant because it is so rare. They are seen by others primarily as weapons or symbols. Their individuality is acknowledged but secondary to their function. To have someone look at you, or rather listen to you, and recognize the person beneath the machine. To be known not for what you can destroy, but for who you are. This is a gift of incalculable value. And the fact that this gift is temporary, that the relationship will end through death, or separation, or the erosion of memory, does not diminish its significance. If anything, the temporary nature makes it more precious. They are building something beautiful despite knowing it cannot last, creating meaning in the face of inevitable loss, choosing connection despite the certainty of eventual isolation. This is perhaps the most profound lesson the story offers, that meaning does not require permanence. We often think of love as something that should last forever, that relationships should be permanent or they are somehow failures. But the dreadnoughts show us that even connection that is fragmentary and temporary can be deeply meaningful, can enrich existence, can make suffering bearable in ways that nothing else can. Every conversation between them is precious because they know it might be their last. Every shared memory is significant because both are aware of how fragile memory has become. They are living fully in the present, finding value in each moment of connection, not because they have achieved some enlightened detachment from attachment, but precisely because they are deeply attached and know how easily that attachment could be severed. This mindfulness, this awareness of the preciousness of the present moment, is something we often struggle to achieve in our own lives. We take relationships for granted, assume there will always be more time, postpone important conversations or expressions of feeling because we believe we can say them tomorrow. The dreadnoughts do not have that luxury. Tomorrow may never come. This moment, this exchange, might be all they have. And so they make it count. They say what needs to be said. They share what needs to be shared. They are honest and vulnerable and present in ways that most people, even those who are not trapped in mechanical sarcophagi, struggle to achieve. The story matters, finally, because it offers a form of hope that is appropriate to the 40k setting. Not the false hope of easy salvation or inevitable progress. Not the naive hope that everything will turn out fine if we just believe hard enough. But the harder, more realistic hope that even in terrible circumstances, even when the universe seems designed to crush all joy, moments of beauty and connection are still possible. This is hope that has looked directly at the darkness and chosen to persist anyway. It is hope that acknowledges suffering without being defined by it. It is hope that knows loss is inevitable, but continues building meaningful connections despite that knowledge. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, two ancient warriors in metal tombs choose to love each other. They know it will end badly. They know the universe will eventually take this from them, as it has taken everything else. But they choose it anyway, because the alternative, complete isolation and mechanical existence devoid of all human warmth, is worse than any external threat. They fight not just for the Imperium, not just for the Emperor, but for each other, for the possibility of another conversation, for the chance to hear a familiar voice across the void, for the reminder that despite everything, they are still human, still capable of connection, still worthy of love. And in a universe that seems designed to prove the opposite, that insists we are nothing but resources to be consumed in an endless war, their love is a quiet rebellion, a assertion of humanity in the face of dehumanization, a refusal to surrender the last remnant of what makes life meaningful. That is why this story matters, not because it offers escape from the darkness of the 40k universe, but because it shows that even in that darkness, light can exist. Brief, fragile, threatened by countless dangers, but real, present, chosen. And if love can survive in the most impossible circumstances imaginable, in the hearts of warriors who barely have hearts anymore, who exist as little more than consciousness and will interface with machines of war, then perhaps love is more resilient than we thought. Perhaps the human capacity for connection, for caring, for choosing each other despite every reason not to, is the most indomitable force in any universe. That is hope. Not the promise that everything will be fine, but the knowledge that even when nothing is fine, when everything is terrible and getting worse, we still reach out to each other. We still try to connect. We still love. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough to make existence bearable, even in the grim darkness of the far future where there is only war. Conclusion. The story of Dreadnoughts falling in love through Vox transmissions is ultimately a story about the resilience of the human spirit. It examines what remains when everything else has been stripped away, when body and time and memory have all been compromised or destroyed, when existence itself has been reduced to consciousness trapped in a machine. What remains is the capacity to choose, to recognize another consciousness as worthy of care, to share ourselves despite the risks and difficulties, to build meaning in the face of inevitable loss. Valorian and Severina, or any dreadnoughts like them, represent the extreme case. If love can exist in their circumstances, then it can exist anywhere. If connection can be maintained across the temporal fragmentations of stasis sleep, the sensory limitations of mechanical existence, and the gradual erosion of organic memory, then no obstacle is truly insurmountable. Their love is not comfortable or easy. It brings as much pain as joy, as much fear as hope. But it is real, and it is chosen, and it matters to both of them in ways that transcend duty or tactical necessity. In choosing each other, they assert their individuality against the Imperium's demand for perfect obedience and mechanical efficiency. In maintaining their connection, they preserve their humanity despite everything designed to destroy it. In caring about each other's survival and well-being, they create meaning beyond the endless cycle of war and death that defines their existence. This is what happens when a dreadnought falls in love through Vox transmissions. They become more human, not less. They reclaim something that should have been lost when they were interred in their metal tombs. They prove that consciousness, will, and choice are enough to sustain connection, that love does not require bodies or stable passage through time, only the decision to reach across whatever void separates us and say, I see you, I know you, you matter to me. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, this is as close to redemption as anyone can hope to find. Not salvation from the war, not escape from suffering, but the knowledge that even in the worst circumstances, we are not entirely alone. Someone hears us when we speak into the void. Someone answers, someone cares. And for beings who have lost almost everything, who exist on the knife's edge between human consciousness and mechanical function, that small connection is everything. It is the difference between mere survival and something approaching life. It is the reason to continue when every rational calculation suggests there is no point. It is proof that despite what has been done to them, despite what they have become, something essential remains. They are still human. They can still love. And in a universe that seems designed to prove otherwise, that is the most defiant and beautiful truth imaginable. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of one of the most tragic and compelling possibilities in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the impossible romance of ancient warriors trapped in metal tombs, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There are countless other stories to explore in the grim darkness of the far future, and I look forward to examining them with you. Until next time, may your Vox channels remain clear, and may you never face the silence of complete isolation. The Emperor protects, but sometimes we must protect each other.